The return of Jesus is famously unpredictable, but the New Testament offers a specific metaphor for the years preceding it: birth pains. These are distinct events that signal a specific season of history, even if the exact day remains unknown. The first major contraction is described as a moment when the entire world would be at war. While regional conflicts have always existed, the First World War involved nearly every major power on the planet simultaneously. This event marked what Jesus called the beginning of sorrows. These sorrows were predicted to escalate through famines, pestilences, and earthquakes happening in rapid succession across the globe. These aren't isolated tragedies. They function as a collective indicator of an approaching conclusion. Alongside these environmental and political shifts, the Bible predicts a sharp rise in the persecution of Christians. Currently, over 365 million people, 1 in 7 Christians globally, face high levels of discrimination and violence for their faith. This accumulation of global crises functions like a series of physical contractions. Just as birth is only a matter of hours once hard labor begins, the convergence of these signs indicates that the prophetic timeline is in motion. Central to this timeline is the millennium, a prophesied 1,000-year era of peace. Christian theology splits into 3 camps regarding this period: those who see it as a spiritual allegory, those who think the church brings it about through social progress, and those who believe it only happens after Christ returns. The premillennial view argues that the world does not gradually improve. Instead, it relies on verses stating that evil men will grow worse and worse. On this timeline, society becomes more unstable and morally degraded, creating a vacuum that needs a global solution. This downward trajectory sets the stage for a desperate population. A world reeling from global war and resource scarcity becomes highly receptive to a centralized authority offering a path back to stability. Out of this globalized political landscape, a man of sin is predicted to rise. The Bible describes him as a charismatic leader who eventually takes control of a 10-king system, capitalizing on the modern push for a unified global economy and government. His first significant act is negotiating a 7-year peace treaty in the Middle East. This 7-year window is what the Book of Revelation calls the Tribulation, a time of unprecedented world judgment. This treaty allows for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, sacrificial rituals would be reinstated on this specific geographic site. Halfway through these 7 years, the peace is shattered. The leader breaks the treaty, halts the temple sacrifices, and enters the holiest place to declare himself God. This event is known as the Abomination of Desolation. This marks the pivot from a political career to a religious dictatorship. The remainder of the tribulation is defined by a mandatory global religion centered entirely on this leader. To enforce this worship, a second figure, the false prophet, introduces the image of the beast. This entity is granted the power to speak and monitor the world, executing anyone who refuses to participate in the new religious system. This system is verified through a mark on the hand or forehead. This mirrors an ancient practice where Jewish people bound God's commandments to their hands and foreheads as a physical sign of their total devotion. This mark becomes a prerequisite for commerce. In a digitized global economy, the infrastructure for a required biometric identification, one that controls every transaction at a grocery store or bank, is already a functional reality. The identification is linked to the number 666. Historically, this was understood through gematria, where letters have numerical values. Because the text explicitly tells those present at the time to calculate the name, it suggests a system where personal identity is mathematically encoded. Prophecies that once seemed like fever dreams are now engineering projects. Autonomous drone swarms and biometric payment chips have moved from the realm of the impossible to the realm of the off-the-shelf. Amidst this timeline of rising evil, the Bible describes a sudden disappearance, known as the rapture. The immediate global impact would be total chaos: unmanned vehicles, empty hospitals, and millions of families searching for people who have vanished in a moment. The timing of this event is a point of significant debate. Some believe it happens before the 7-year tribulation, while others argue it occurs at the midpoint or the very end.
The pre-tribulation view relies on the early church's expectation of an imminent arrival. The Apostle Paul wrote as if the event could happen during his own lifetime, and early Christians used the word Maranatha, "Come quickly, Lord," as a greeting of hope. This expectation of imminence is designed to create a constant state of readiness. If the return can happen at any moment, knowledge of the timeline demands immediate spiritual attention. Certain prophecies remain unfulfilled today, such as the total destruction of Damascus. The prophet Isaiah declared that this ancient city would one day become a ruinous heap, a transformation yet to occur despite centuries of conflict. The timeline ends in the Valley of Megiddo, the site of the Battle of Armageddon. Here, the nations of the world gather for a final conflict against the returning Jesus Christ. Christ returns to defeat this global system and establish a literal 1,000-year reign of peace on earth, fulfilling the promises of the millennium. The internal logic of this timeline, the birth pains, the sudden disappearances, and the gathering of armies, builds toward a single conclusion: imminence. If these events are in motion, the value of knowing the timeline lies in how it prompts you to prepare. To see the full details of this sequence in Revelation, watch this next video.